Well, good evening, good night, good day, wherever you happen to be in the world, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on this first look for our brand new OM5 Mark II. For those of you who haven't joined me before, my name's Aaron. I'm the Product and Education Specialist for OM System here in Australia and New Zealand. And I'm coming to you live from sunny Brisbane. So on location today, getting out there and showing everybody this brand new fantastic camera. So hopefully everything's coming through loud and clear. I've also got Ante, who's here, who's going to be joining us this evening and answering any comments or questions that you might have throughout the session. But we've also got lots of time for Q&A at the end of the session as well. So if there's anything that I haven't covered as we go along. So as we start, guys, let's see what we've got for you this evening. So we're going to basically go through a couple of different things. So starting off with, obviously, the introduction. So this is a fantastic new camera from OM System. It's a direct replacement for the original OM5. And what's fantastic about this is the upgrades and the changes that they've made to this new model. So we're going to go through all this one at a time. But the first thing I think everybody's probably noticed is the beautiful color schemes that we've got available for this new camera. So we've got our standard silver and black, which obviously look absolutely fantastic. They're finished really beautifully. But this new sand color is something that everybody's talking about, and I think everybody's really excited about doing. So I think that that's going to be something that everybody wants to jump onto really, really quickly, because I joined Claire and Claire's session last evening, and they've reminded everybody that if this is the color that you want to get onto, then you not necessarily need to do it straight away, but you need to do it fairly quickly, because we're going to have lesser numbers of the sand color compared to the silver and black. So if that's definitely something that you guys are interested in, then definitely contact your local retailer or jump onto the OM System website wherever you happen to be in the world to check that out. But let's look at what we're going to be covering this evening, guys. So starting off with high image quality, then we're going to move on to absolute reliability. So talking about all the things that this camera can take wherever you happen to be or whatever adventure you happen to be going on. Then we move on to our core benefits, so some of the cool new things and the cool new interactions that you've got with this new camera as well. And then finally, we'll finish off with some convenient features as well, because there's been some pretty cool changes that have been made from the Mark I to the Mark II. So let's get into it, everybody. So let's get started. So I think when we talk about image quality, we obviously talk about that synergy that we always have with any sort of camera, coming with the sensor, the processing engine, the image stabilization system, which is obviously a huge, huge deal for us as a brand, and also high performance lenses. Now, we all know it starts with lenses, but this combination for this camera is going to be absolutely fantastic in lots of different scenarios. And I've actually curated some different things that or different images for you guys to see from some of our visionaries and our ambassadors that have captured all over the world, because it's all well and good to talk about the speeds and feeds and the tech and spec and all that sort of thing. But I think one of the brilliant things about this camera is actually seeing what it can do. So I'm going to show you some of those in a second. But when we're talking about lenses, this is actually a fantastic partner for the f4 range of lenses that we have. So what's brilliant about this camera is that obviously it's super small and super light. And we're actually going to look at some of the sizes and weights in a little while. But what's fantastic about this is the way that you can utilize those f4 lenses. Now, it's only up until fairly recently that we've actually had a range of f4s in that trinity of lenses, if you want to call it, being the 8 to 25 mil wide angle, the 12 to 45, which is actually one of the lenses that you can purchase within the kit for the OM5 Mark II, but also the 40 to 150 f4 as well. Now, what's brilliant about these lenses is that not only are they pro grade, so they're super, super quality, super sharp, but also completely weather sealed to match the body as well. So we'll get into the nuts and bolts of what the sort of levels of weather sealing that the camera has in a second, but they're beautiful partners for such a small and light camera. And let's face it, that's exactly what you're shooting for if this is the sort of camera that you're interested in, because it is so small and so light. And obviously you want the lens to be partnered with that as well. But for those of you who aren't familiar with our system, we have one lens mount. So we don't have 2 or 3 different mounts for our particular brand. We use a singular lens mount, which means that every single one of our lenses can be used on every single one of our bodies, which is absolutely awesome. So what well, obviously we talked about the f4 lenses, and again, covering those 3 sort of major focal lengths that you would have, and also similar to what we've had in our f2.8 range for quite a while, but also perfect partners for some of our prime lenses as well. So starting off with the 20 mil f4, again, one of our pro grade lenses, super, super sharp, especially at wide open, but also completely weather sealed like all of our pro lenses are. And that's exactly one of the things that makes our pro grade lenses pro. Next, you've also got our brand new iterations of the 17mm f1.8 and also the 25mm f1.8. Now, these were released at the same time as the OM3. And the brilliant thing about these is that they're now completely weather sealed as well. So whether you're a street shooter or a travel photographer or somebody who wants to go super, super small and light, those are the perfect lenses and the perfect partner for this camera, because again, the whole profile of everything is going to remain super, super small. Okay. But like I said, let's talk about some of the things that this camera can actually achieve, because again, the speeds and feeds mean some things to some people, but I think the most important thing is what can this camera actually achieve? So let's have a look at some of the images of what this camera has already been able to capture. And obviously this is before it was officially released. So we're really excited about seeing what you guys out there can actually capture and what you guys can do with this. And starting off with, look, this is an absolutely beautiful image. Again, beautiful dynamic range, beautiful use of light, but super detail in there as well. And then moving on to this one. So something that we can definitely relate to here in Australia is getting outdoors, getting in the outback and getting in a 4-wheel drive. And I think this is an absolutely stunning image. So not only has it got beautiful contrast and color, but again, the amount of detail that's still captured here, even though it's in quite a high dynamic range scene, is absolutely beautiful. But again, we've got a perfect partner here for a take anywhere camera. So getting it in these sorts of situations is exactly what this camera is designed for. So being small and light, it's not going to weigh you down. For those of you who might have joined the stream with the Claires yesterday evening and saw Ben talking about his experience with the camera, showing off some of the things that he's doing in the mountains of Scotland was absolutely crazy. And if you are really taking your adventure to that next level, your size and weight's a big deal, because you're not only packing for the shelter that you've got to carry, as well as all your food and everything else. So to have something that's super small in profile and super small in size and weight, that's exactly what you want to be looking at here. So awesome. Now, next, again, beautiful dynamic range and beautiful amounts of detail here, because we can see that light just bursting through that tiny little bit of mist first thing in the morning. It's absolutely beautiful. But again, these are the sorts of images that you have to get out in the world and really sort of take it to another level with capturing these sorts of images, where you're not going to be able to capture these sitting in your living room. You're really going to have to get out in the world and challenge yourself to take these sorts of images wherever you happen to be, or whatever you have access to in the world as well, depending on where you happen to be. We don't have a huge amount of mountains here in Australia, but these, I believe, were captured over in Europe, but also we've got some beautiful shots from the mountain ranges in the States as well that, again, putting the camera to the test in some pretty challenging environments. But then shifting gears a little bit to start using some of the inbuilt technology in here. So this image was captured with our live neutral density filter. So we're going to talk about the computational modes in a little bit, because the computational modes that we have in our cameras is something that we've been developing and innovating for over many years. And this camera is no different. But what they've actually changed is the way that you can interact with the camera and interact with these computational modes. So we'll talk about that in a fair bit of detail, because that's actually one of the really big changes from an interaction point of view when it comes to this camera. But again, you can see this beautiful, subtle use of live neutral density filter here, where we're capturing that sensation of movement in the shot. And for those of you who have done workshops with me before, you'll probably hear me bang on about that a fair bit. But capturing that sensation of movement within the shot is exactly what separates a nice image to something that really draws you in and really captures your attention. And that's exactly what you can do with what's built into the camera. You don't have to add anything extra to it. And then obviously you can go to another extreme, to something like this, where you're really creating that theater and, again, really enhancing that sensation of movement. And that's all being able to be done inside the camera. But also, whether you shoot sports, wildlife, or anything high speed, the camera's also got a technology called Pro Capture. Now, if you haven't heard of Pro Capture before, basically what Pro Capture is a pre-capturing of frames before you completely press the shutter button on your camera. So this is a perfect example, and I've got a little GIF of showing this in real time in a little while. But being able to capture those moments when the movement happens before you can actually react. And look, modern cameras are very responsive. They call it latency from when you're hitting your shutter button to when you actually fire and capture the image. It's very, very short. So unfortunately, a lot of the time, It's us, the photographer, that actually has to take responsibility for missing the shot. But that's where Pro Capture comes into it. So you can actually pre-capture up to 14 frames, but you can still capture it up to 30 frames if you're capturing it in the highest speed mode. And that's still in raw resolution as well. So you're not capturing that in JPEG, you can still do it in RAW. So again, incredible technology into such a small package. But again, whether it be high speed or even low speed environmental shots, when you are capturing animals or birds, whatever it happens to be, again, the camera's going to be able to keep up with you because of that focusing system. So it's super fast, super responsive. But then we can shift gears again to something completely different, to slowing everything down. So this was captured with our technology called Live Composite. Now, if you guys haven't seen Live Composite before, you should actually jump onto our webpage and check out some of the things that we can do when it comes to capturing moving light. And it doesn't have to be super fast, it can be super slow, exactly like what you're seeing here with capturing star trails. So again, I'll talk a little bit more about Live Composite as we go, but that's actually a really brilliant creative tool that is built into pretty much all of our cameras now. But it's also obviously a big part of what you can get with the OM5 Mark II. And again, you can use it creatively like this as well, because it's only going to capture the moving light. So once light is written to the sensor with Live Composite, it's not going to change. But for something like this, where you actually do have that movement happening within the frame, again, it just creates a much more interesting and powerful image. And again, that's the power of Live Composite and what you can do inside the camera. Okay, so moving on from there, guys, again, a big part, as I touched on a little bit before, when it comes to our image quality, is that our image stabilization. Now, again, if you guys have joined me with our workshops before, no doubt you've heard me talk about this, but for those of you that are new to this, it's incredibly important to get your image stable, because if it's not, it doesn't matter what the resolution is, it's obviously going to be blurry and it's going to look soft. So we've continued to develop the way that our internal stabilization system works. And when I say internal, it's actually the sensor inside the camera moving, and it moves in all 5 directions. So pitch in your vertical, horizontal, but also a body roll as well. Now, when you combine that with some of our IS sync lenses, or sync IS lenses, I should say, that has a floating element inside the lens that actually talks to the body in real time, which means you're actually enhancing the level of stabilization that you're getting. And again, that's incredibly important to us because of the way that we actually do this. The way that we do this is that when the sensor is moving within the camera, it's actually floating on magnetic gyros. It doesn't touch anything. So it can move quicker, it can stop quicker, it can move in smaller increments, but then it can also be programmed what to do. And that's how we achieve things like high resolution shot, which we're going to touch on in a little bit. But again, the amount of things that you can do by hand because of the stabilization system that we have in this camera is incredible. So I know Claire actually talked about potentially trying to do some shutter speed challenges to see how long people can handhold the 5 Mark II once it actually gets out in the market. So that might be something we put up on our Facebook page, on our Instagram, set a little bit of a challenge to see who can actually handhold the steadiest shot for the longest period of time, which would be pretty cool. So that's stuff for image quality, guys. I'm just jumping onto here to check out some of the comments as I go, because I can see that Ante's replying to some of these. From Nicholas, good looking camera. You're absolutely right. So I'm very lucky. I've actually already got mine here. And as you can see, I've got my sand color one here. I'll pop that up there so you can actually see that a little bit. You can see just how small that is. Now, that lens that I've got on there is the 12-45. So that's actually one of the lenses that you can get the camera in the kit. Just remember that sand beige, that's only available body only, but with the silver and black, you can definitely get, and actually save yourself some money by getting it in that kit with that 12-45mm lens. But as you can see, and we were actually talking about this today, I was doing some store visits in Brisbane, and a couple of the guys in stores had actually had a look at the camera and seen all the stuff online that we've been doing. And they said, oh, wow, it actually looks a little bit different to what you see in the images online. And I totally agree with that, because I reckon out of 4 different screens, you'll get 4 different shades of what this actually looks like. So get out and see this in store if you actually want to see what it looks like in real time, because it really is a pretty cool tactical sand color. That's what I like to call it anyway. But again, it is a really, really nice camera. And they've made some subtle design changes to it as well, which we'll touch on as we go. But anyway, let me just quickly see if we've got any other comments on here. There we go. So Live Composite. Yeah, cool. Awesome. From Nicholas, can I confirm the stabilization is more than incredible? Awesome. Thank you, Nicholas. That, again, it's all well and good to hear it from our side. We actually want to hear people from the real world who are actually using it in real time, hear and see what we're doing at the same time. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's move on, guys. So we've covered our stuff for image quality. Let's move on to our absolute reliability. So again, adventure. It's in our nature is a big tagline for this new camera. So we want to make sure that it's going to live up to that promise, especially in all sorts of challenging environments. So obviously we've already touched on a little bit before about being small and light, but when you actually talk about body and lens, you can actually have this lens with one of the 1.8 mil lenses for 500 grams or just or there or thereabouts, which is pretty cool. That's a pretty low profile sort of setup. Or if you actually wanted to include a couple of those pro lenses in there, you're still looking at 1 kilo or just under. So again, if you're wanting to travel light but still cover those sorts of focal lengths in that range that you would want, you can actually do it in a couple of lenses and still keep that profile nice and small and nice and light. And it's not just when you're getting out and adventuring and getting into challenging conditions, it's also fantastic for when you're traveling. Again, I'm very spoiled. I get samples of everything that OM System makes, much to the depression of a lot of people when I tell them that. So please don't get jealous. It is part of my job. But I often find that if I am just traveling for family or just traveling for myself, I don't really want to carry anything more than what I have to. So this OM5 Mark II is definitely going to be that go-to camera for my walk-around camera because it is just so much smaller and lighter. And again, partnered with those f4 lenses is a really, really nice little package. But when we're actually talking about the sealing on the camera, we're talking about how tough this is. So for those of you who haven't seen that rating before, or IP53, what that actually stands for is ingress protection. But then you've got the 2 numbers there as well. So the 5 is about the dust sealing, and then the 3 is about the water sealing. Now, as you can see in this little GIF here, there's water being thrown on it. We've had anecdotal evidence from people over the years about some of the things that they've done with their camera. I'm not going to share all of those because I don't want to give people bad ideas for what they should or shouldn't be doing with their camera. But if you've seen some of our demo videos before of just how heavily we internally test these cameras, they basically set the camera on a jig with water jets going over the top of it. And again, it's a testament to not just what you can do in a lab, but also what you can do in the real world. And obviously that's the most important part of what this can do. So dust sealing is incredibly important. And again, that's what that IP53 rating gives you, but also splash proof. So again, if you get caught out in the rain or maybe even something a little bit heavier, the camera and lenses is still going to have you covered. And then freeze proof to -10 as well. So again, we don't get ridiculous alpine freezing temperatures here in Australia, but we know you definitely do overseas for anybody who's watching overseas as well. So that's fantastic. And also one of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit later is being able to power the camera from a power bank, which again is actually incredibly important if you are using it in the cold. But again, that's obviously going to extend your battery life and extend the amount of time that you can shoot for because you've got that capability as well. So all of those things, again, make a pretty tough little camera, but that's not all the story when it comes to dust reduction. So on this little GIF here, you can see a sensor or bare sensor that was actually rigged up to power, because every single time you turn on the camera, there's a vibration that happens on the sensor, and it actually creates like a popping mechanism. And every time that happens, it's pushing dust or anything that's off the sensor. Now, we've continued to develop not just the movement of the sensor and the vibration, but also the slipperiness or the non-stickiness, if you want to call it, of the sensor, and also the anti-static of the package as well, because any of those sorts of moving things have got the potential to attract dust onto the sensor. So when you shake it off, which is obviously what's happening here, it's also important that that dust goes somewhere and not goes back onto the sensor. So there's actually adhesive strips on the inside of the camera that captures anything that's free floating. So hand on heart, over, and I'm going to show my age here a little bit. In my 20 years, nearly, and so in October, I've had to have my sensors cleaned twice. The first one was when somebody handed me a bare camera with no lens on it while we were shooting dirt bikes. Again, not my fault. The other one was when my darling eldest son, when he was about 6 or 7, decided to put his entire finger inside one of the sensors on, I think it was my, I can't remember what camera it was now, but luckily no breakages, didn't crack the cover, didn't crack the sensor or anything like that. So it was able to be cleaned. But again, in real world, I actually had the opportunity to shoot the Desert Fink race a couple of weeks ago, where they raced from Alice Springs in the heart of Australia out to the Fink River and then back again over a whole weekend. Pretty much as dusty and as horrible as you can imagine. And shooting with our cameras was no problem. And none of our crew, nearly everybody, was using Olympus with us, or OMSYSTEM, I should say. And not a single person had any problems with that. So that's pretty cool, because again, it's all well and good to say it on paper. It's actually pretty cool to be able to talk about it and share your experiences with that sort of thing as well. And I know a couple of people have already done that, but that's pretty cool. So that's the dust reduction system. But also, one of the design changes that we want to talk about is the way that they've actually changed the grip. Now, on the, well, you can see on this little GIF here, it's how it's sort of folding over, but you might be able to see this if I hold this up and hold this a little bit closer. There we go. So you can actually see this little cutout on the very top front of where the grip is. Now, the reason why this has been changed is to make it more comfortable, because of that cutout now that's on the front grip. It's exactly where your index finger would sit while you're holding the camera and getting ready to shoot. So it's a little bit more comfortable. It actually feels a little bit more grippy, even though the actual physical size of the grip isn't all that much different. But you've also got a lot of smoothing of the edges around the top cover of the camera as well. So again, they're only light cosmetic things for the most part, but that change to the grip actually really changes the feel of the camera. I used to use, again, my OM5 fairly regularly for when I was traveling or shooting family or just out for the day. So it's those little things that you do actually notice as you go along that do actually make a difference and improve the way that you shoot, especially if you're going to do it for a long period of time. But also, again, from a reliability point of view, is the ability now to shoot with an external power bank, because we've now got USB-C charging. So obviously that was a very big standard change that's happening globally, and obviously we needed to keep up with that, and as we should have done. But again, because so many things are charged and powered from USB-C, it means that you've pretty much only got to carry one cable around with you, regardless of what you're doing or what you're carrying with you. So again, it's convenient to only have one. Or some of the younger people in the room might not remember those days where things had probably 3 or 4 different connections. So you had to have 3 or 4 different cables to go with it. It's not a lot of fun, especially when the one that you actually need, you've left somewhere or it's not accessible to you at the time. So again, to have that consistency across the board when pretty much everything needs to be at that point now, that's pretty cool. But again, it also enables us to be able to charge on the fly, and then obviously power from that external bank while you're shooting with the camera as well. Okay, so that's our reliability settings, guys. Next, we want to talk about core benefits, and we're going to spend a fair bit of time here, because this is where we get into the really cool stuff of what the camera can actually do. So Ante's got those comments. Beautiful. Thank you, Ante. Cool. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about is the computational button, or the CP button. So if I hold the camera up, actually you can see on the screenshot on the camera here, but that little CP button there, this enables you to access all of the computational modes that are built into the camera by one press of the button. So all you need to do is press and hold that button with your index finger, because it's positioned on the top of the camera, and then roll the rear control wheel with your thumb, and all of those different options come up at the bottom of your screen. So high resolution shot, live ND, all different levels, HDR, what else? Oh, I could read them off the screen here instead of trying to remember. And also multi-exposure as well as focus stacking. So all of those things are now at one touch. And this is done very deliberately, because we've got these really cool technologies that enhance the way that you photograph, but we want to make them as accessible as possible. So not just to somebody who's already been part of the OMSYSTEM family, but somebody who is either just new to photography or they're just getting into our system. We want to make it as simple and as streamlined as possible. So that's exactly why they've done that. So as you can see, there's lots of different things you can do with it, but let's actually go through each of these modes in detail, just so I can tell you a little bit about them, how you might use them, but also what they're actually doing and how they're doing it. So starting off with high resolution shot. So this again is something that we've been doing for many, many years. I think it was about 11 years ago now, maybe 12. We actually, it'd be close to 11 now, we released the EM5 Mark II. Now, the EM5 Mark II was our first camera that had pixel shifting high resolution shot. So the sensor would actually shift itself half a pixel width 8 times, and then overlay all of that information into one high resolution shot. Now, we've continued to develop that setup, because now you can also do it by hand. But there is a little difference. There is a subtle difference in the way that this process actually goes between high res when you do it on tripod versus on hand. So let's talk about that a little bit. So when the process for tripod high res is pretty much identical, where the sensor will physically shift itself half a pixel width each time and then overlays it all into an 80 megapixel RAW file. Now, again, it's incredibly important that we understand the difference between the two, because every now and again, and sometimes you've sort of got to recognize what the icon is. It's actually very clear now that you can access all of this stuff with the CP button. But you've got to remember that if you are shooting by hand, make sure that you use the handheld mode, because if your hands are moving, even if it's a small little vibration or a tiny little bit of movement, that combined with the sense of physically moving inside the camera, that's where you're not going to get the best result. But that's why handheld high res was actually developed, because our engineers are pretty clever people, and what they was really pushing for was to develop and get, not just give you better resolution, but there's also other benefits to it as well, which I'll touch on in a second. But when the engineers were very clever in the way that they did handheld, because they actually took the micro vibration or any sort of small movement that happens while you're holding the camera to differentiate in between each of the individual frames. So as I mentioned, with tripod mode, you're pixel shifting physically the sensor inside the camera. What you're doing when you're shooting handheld high res is taking 12 shots, and they're all, again, slightly moving, slightly different from each other. And the camera is actually oversampling. So it's capturing more information than what it needs. And then it combines all of those into a 50 megapixel RAW file. So again, you're still getting that beautiful high resolution shot. But again, you're not not having to be tied to a tripod, which just makes it a lot more flexible and usable. And also, it's one less thing that you have to carry, especially if you're shooting, adventure landscapes or really challenging environments where the last thing you want to do is carry anything that you don't necessarily need. That's where handheld high res is going to do you a favor. But one thing that I don't think gets talked about enough when it comes to our high resolution shot is that it's not just about resolution. There's actually a huge there's a whole range of other benefits that you get from this. The first thing is color. You're actually capturing a lot more color because you are pixel shifting and, again, overlaying images on top of each other. So you're actually getting a lot more color information that is built into that file. Also, you're getting better noise suppression. So again, because you're stacking all those pixels on top of each other in order to achieve the final result, you actually get a noise improvement if you are shooting at higher ISOs. So that's a huge benefit as well. And then on top of that, you get an increase in dynamic range, again, because we're basically compositing multiple shots on top of each other. So for those of you who haven't heard that expression, dynamic range, before, basically what we're talking about is capturing as much detail in the extremes of the shot. So all the way up in the highlights or the really bright parts of the shot, all the way down to the shadows or the really dark parts of the shot. So the more information that you've got in those areas, the more flexible the file is and the better it is to edit after the fact. So again, it's not just high res shot is not just about high res. There's actually a whole bunch more that you can do with that, and a whole bunch more that you can experience when you're actually using high res shot. The other quick pointer that I do want to raise on the difference between the two of them is that when you're using the tripod mode, you can actually use it with flash in a studio. It works absolutely brilliantly, especially for product photography and that sort of thing. Also, if you're using different types of lights, you can actually set a flash delay. So because, again, when that pixel shifting is going on, every single shot needs to be exposed equally or exactly the same. So you can, if you are using either really big monoblocks or something that might be a little bit older from a speed light point of view, it's pretty cool because you can set it up so there's a little bit of a delay in between each of those pixel shifts. So the flash has got enough time to recharge itself, especially if it's going at 1-to-1 power, and then it'll take the next shot, give it a second to charge up again, and it'll go through that process the whole time. So again, it guarantees you that best experience, but again, you can tailor it to whatever your needs happen to be. But also, when it comes to handheld high-res shot, you don't actually have to use, or you aren't able to use flashes when you're shooting handheld high-res. However, you get great experience and really, really good results when you just use LED panels. But also, the other quick little tip that I'll give you when it comes to high-res shot, especially when it's coming to by hand or the handheld version, is making sure that you also finish or let the exposure finish happening. And what I mean by that is that every single shot needs to be exposed the same. So every single shot's going to be captured at the same shutter speed. So for example, if you were doing a handheld resolution shot at a 13th of a second, it's actually 12 times a 13th of a second. So you actually need to let it go through that process. And then once that status bar comes up in your viewfinder or on your LCD screen, that's when you can start moving the camera. So, and that actually applies to all of our cameras. So all the cameras, I should say, that have handheld high resolution shot. So again, from an operational point of view, once you get your head around that, it's going to give you beautiful results. And again, it's not just about resolution. Okay, next, Live ND. So again, live ND is something that we've continued to develop over the years. The huge advantage with this is not just to be able to tame and control the amount of ambient light within the shot that helps you create that sensation of movement in the photograph. The live component is, again, something that probably gets overlooked when we talk about this, because it's all about, it's great to have that effect be created in camera, but the live component is actually the really important part of this as well, because it streamlines your shooting process. Because as you go through those different options or the different levels of filter, the camera actually shows you what the impact of that level of filter is going to have on the image. So instead of having to take multiple shots and then sort of check them and then go, okay, no, I want that a little bit slower or a little bit faster, whatever it happens to be, it shows you exactly what it looks like prior to capture. So again, really, really quick, really easy. But again, you actually get slight dynamic range improvements when you're basically compositing images on top of each other. Now, this will change a little bit depending on the level of filter that you choose. But basically what's happening is, instead of like you would do with a physical ND filter, where it's basically sunglasses for your lens, it's a darkened piece of glass that you put in front of your lens, which enables you to shoot for a longer shutter speed, because there's, the light's slowing down, or there's less light coming into the camera. This is being done digitally. Now, when it's being done digitally, it's basically breaking down that exposure time that you set. And again, little operational tip for this as well is that you must shoot in either manual priority or in shutter priority, because the camera actually requires as in the photographer's input as to what the shutter speed is going to be. So again, really good tip if you're going to pick up one of these cameras, make sure that if you do want to use those modes, that you are in either manual or in shutter priority. But again, as I mentioned, you can actually get a dynamic range benefit out of this, because you're compositing images basically on top of each other to achieve that final result. Now, it's not like stacking or bracketing where you'll have the composited image and then a whole bunch of others. This still delivers you a singular raw image in camera that is just as malleable, if not even slightly more, than what your regular file is going to be. So again, pretty cool piece of tech that's in there. And again, considering it's such a small and light camera, it's pretty amazing the results that you can achieve with this as well. Also, the other thing is, or the other benefit of using Live ND, is that you don't have to have all of those additional filters and all the additional cost, and also the complication as well. Filters can be pretty fiddly. I think most people that do it on a fairly regular level would basically have, multiple step-up rings and then use quite a large filter, so that way you've only got to purchase one. But the cost of them can add up pretty quickly, especially if you're shooting with our really wide-angle lenses, so the 8mm fisheye or the 7-14 f2.8. They've got a big bulbous element on the front of them, so you can't actually use your traditional screw-on filters. You actually have to use a cowl with 150mm drop-in filters. And again, those can be incredibly expensive. So to have the ability to control the exposure the way that you can with Live ND in camera is pretty incredible. Quick little comment check here as well. So sorry guys, because Ante is doing a fantastic job of answering all of these for me. Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you very much. Cool. Okay, so next, let's talk about focus stacking, because focus stacking is something, again, a technology that we continue to develop over the last, quite a few years now. But to be able to stack images in camera, but still shift that focus to deliver that image for you in real time in camera without you having to do any stacking yourself is pretty incredible. Not only does it, again, speed up that process, some people will use this as a template for how many images that they need to take if they're going to take a bracket, because again, you're taking 8 frames that are being combined together in camera, but that still gives you all of those individual images that you've captured throughout that process as well. But let me take a step back a second, because I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. Some of you might not even know what focus stacking is. Basically, focus stacking is very, very similar to taking a HDR image or combining a whole bunch of images together to give you a better final result. It's predominantly used in macro, but I'm going to give you a couple of different examples on this in a second. But predominantly, it's used in macro photography, because the closer that we get to our subject, the smaller that depth of field is, or the smaller amount that is actually going to be displayed in focus. So by focus stacking our images, the camera will actually take multiple shots and then put those all together, all at those different focal planes, to enlarge or extend the amount that's actually in focus within our frame. Okay. Let me show you. It's probably easier if you actually see it in real time. So what we've got here is a couple of screenshots. So in our first capture here, you can see that our dragonfly is basically his head's in focus, but we're dropping off in focus pretty much behind his head. Now, this is what you would pretty much see from a single capture. Now, looking at that, that was f4. So again, you can see everything past its head is pretty much out of focus. Now, this is at a reasonable distance as well, because you can see that's an enlargement of that larger image. But once we actually use focus stacking, you can see we can do exactly the same thing, but we extend that depth of field, or we extend the amount that's going to be in focus. Now, again, this is even more noticeable the closer that you get to your subject. So this is why there's so many people around the world that use our system specifically for macro photography, because for many years, we were the only brand that had in-camera focus stacking as well as bracketing. There's a few that have started to catch up for focus bracketing. I don't know if there's any that currently do focus stacking. So again, it's a great thing to have, because also with our crop factor, you actually get broader depth of field naturally than what you would do from another camera system. So there's actually a huge benefit on both sides, but obviously that built-in technology enables you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise normally be able to do in camera. You'd actually have to take all of those images in a bracket, all focused differently, and then put them in a software program to stick them together for you. But as I said, macro is predominantly where this has been seen, and where we have focused on in the past. It actually really gives you a great benefit when you're shooting in something like landscape. Now, the reason why it works brilliantly in landscape, because when we're taking a landscape shot, we pretty much want every single part of that frame in focus. So by combining all of those images in camera, we're extending that depth of field. Now, obviously, it's a little bit easier to do because we're doing it over a much broader field, and you don't necessarily have to stop your lens all the way down to do that either. And that's the other part of the benefit of using in-camera focus stacking, is that because you're taking those multiple shots and sticking them all together to extend that depth of field, or how much is going to be in focus, you don't actually have to stop your f-stop all the way down to f11, f13, depending on the lens, which means that you're letting in more light, which actually makes it more flexible to use, because it means if you're not stopping your aperture all the way down, you can actually use faster shutter speeds, which means you can actually do a lot more by hand without having to rely on a tripod, or even adding light with either LED panels or flashes or whatever it happens to be. So that's from a macro sense, of course. Cool. So huge benefit for focus stacking in camera. And again, not just for macro. Let's look at using that in some other ways as well. Next, we've got HDR, or high dynamic range shooting. So I quickly mentioned this before, but again, some people might not understand or have seen this before. But basically what the camera is doing is taking 4 different images, all exposed slightly differently, but then putting them all together for you in camera. So you can see, even though it's quite dark in the foreground inside this car and it's quite bright in the background, we can still see all of that detail there, because we've got all those different exposures stuck together to give us that great result in camera. And again, for any sort of high contrast scene where you've got some quite dark shadows, or really bright sunshine, or really bright light, by combining those images together, we kind of get the best of both ends of the spectrum. And again, it's done in camera for you. Next, multi-exposure. So multi-exposure, again, is something that's a pretty cool creative thing to have in camera, where you can actually overlay images on top of each other, as you can see in this example here. So we've got a beautiful new tactical sand camera overlaid over some breaking water. So that's pretty cool. And again, it's all available and accessible through that computational mode button on the camera. So it's also really quick and easy to access as well. Now, that's it for the computational modes. I do quickly want to touch on live composite, because what you're seeing in this little GIF here is actually a real-time example of what you would see on the camera screen while you're actually taking a live composite shot. So you actually see all of those individual blades of light as they're being written to the sensor. Again, I could spend all day talking about live composite. This is something that we've had to ourselves as a brand for quite a while. There's a couple of other sort of slight variations from some of the other brands, but not in the same way that we do it, and not as streamlined or as successful as what this can be for you from a creative point of view. So again, if you haven't joined us for one of our sessions before on nighttime photography or live composite in particular, jump onto our webpage. I'll get Ante actually to throw the link to our global events page in there. So that way, anybody who wants to see what we've got coming up, jump onto there. And live composite and night shooting is definitely a big part of that. So again, the brilliant thing about live composite is once you set your initial exposure, it's tracking the moving light, and that's only what's being written to the sensor. And you can actually do this for up to 3 hours as well. So it's over an incredible period of time. It's not something that's really short. But then you can also use it with another technology that we have in the OM5 Mark II called Starry Sky Autofocus. Now, a lot of people have sort of had small attempts at doing astrophotography. I've been blessed to be able to do a fair bit of it over my time, but one of the key things to making sure that your Milky Way shots look good is to make sure that they're in focus. Now, there's lots of different techniques that you can use. Obviously, we want to be shooting our lenses wide open as we can because we want as much light coming into it as possible. But Starry Sky Autofocus takes all of that guesswork out for you. And because it's not buried in the menu, it's actually right next to all of your other focusing types. It's really quick and really easy to access as well. And all you've basically got to do is point it at the night sky and let it do its thing. There's two different versions to it. So you can have a speed setting, which is sort of designed for when you're shooting by hand, but then you've also got an accuracy setting as well, which is when you're going to have the camera positioned on a tripod, because that process is going to take a little bit longer, which is pretty much where we're going to spend most of our time shooting on a tripod if we are exposing for, 30 seconds, a minute, or, even a couple of hours if we're doing star trails. So you can use that in combination with live composite as well, which is pretty cool. But also something that's been added to enhance our night shooting, and this has only been seen in our more expensive and flagship models, is a thing called night vision. So once you turn night vision on, it actually brightens not your exposure, but brightens what you can see on your LCD screen and in your viewfinder. And the reason why it does that is that it gives you the ability to see what you're actually looking at or what's available to you. So you can not only focus, but you can compose your shot as well based on what's actually there. Because we've all been in that situation where it's super, super dark. We can't actually see, or we might be able to see it with the naked eye, but it might be a little bit difficult for the camera to see. That's where night vision is going to be, or do you a big favor if you get in those sorts of situations. But again, another thing that's been added that's only been in our flagship models up until this point is a technology called handheld assist. Now, basically, handheld assist is a live grid that comes up on your camera, and it's something you turn off and turn on, so you don't have to use this all of the time. But basically, the way that it works is we want to keep that that center square as close to the center and not moving as we can. Same as with our two other levels on the left and right of that square as well. The stiller we keep that box, the better and longer we're going to be able to capture for. Now, it's definitely a technique thing. My best ever was 13 seconds. I've never been able to do it again, so I don't know exactly what stars aligned for me to be able to do that particular time. But it is incredible what you can do handheld with this, especially at wider focal lengths. And that's exactly what handheld assist is designed to do, is to give you a visual representation of what's actually moving and how you can actually sort of line those up and keep your hands as steady as possible. So that's pretty cool as well. Now, Pro Capture, as I mentioned before, so again, this is something that we've seen in the OM5 Mark 1. And again, this is no different here as well. So Pro Capture with single autofocus at up to 30 frames per second, but again, still with pre-captured 14 frames, or with continuous focus at up to 10 frames per second, but still with up to 14 frames pre-captured as well. And that's raw resolution too, guys. So that's not just JPEGs. You can do one or the other, by the way. You don't have to shoot it in RAW if you don't want to, but you can and have the ability to do that in RAW, even when you are pre-capturing, which again is pretty incredible, but also it means that you should never miss the moment, because if you're missing it that badly, either someone was distracting you or you maybe need to get a little bit more practice in. As I mentioned before, modern cameras are really, really responsive. So it is unfortunately us, the photographer, that's got to take responsibility for that if we do miss it. But with Pro Capture, you really shouldn't. Also, face and eye priority has been continued to be developed with the OM5 Mark II. So improved autofocus and algorithm to capture face and eye, but also better in profile and also better at distance as well. Because if we are going to get outdoors, a lot of the time we're going to hopefully be with friends and family, and we want to take those beautiful on location portraits. So the camera is obviously going to help us do that with our face detection. Now, also, something called Color Creator is in the OM5 Mark II. Now, you can see that little wheel there at the bottom of the screen where you can control not just your color saturation, it's more, and also a little bit of a tint change as well, but you can change the intensity of this as we go along as well. So it's all controlled by your front and rear control wheels while you're actually using it. But again, you can completely reshape and change the look, feel, and tone of an image simply by using Color Creator in camera. So again, all happens in real time as well. So you see it all happen as it's happening. But also from a video perspective, and again, this is only recently released, and the only other camera that this is currently available in is the OM3, is our two new cinema profiles. Now, the reason why these are so, I suppose, usable, but also why they're so cool, is that it means that you don't have to sit down and color grade and do all those sort of post-production things on your video to make them look cinematic and make them look really, really beautiful. All you've got to do is set whichever profile you like the look of. My personal preference is the Cinema 1 profile, but again, that's a completely personal preference. But it just means that you can get these beautiful looks and feels straight out of camera without you having to do anything. However, if you do want to color grade your images, we also have our log profile, our OM Log 400 profile built in here as well. So if you do want to take your videography to that next level by color grading, you've also got the ability and flexibility to be able to do that because of that inbuilt log profile. But otherwise, we've got 4K and full HD at 120. Also, vertical video, and this is something that we've only had in one or two cameras previously, but vertical video is basically being able to shoot a video while you're holding the camera in a vertical aspect. And that's the way that's actually going to save to the camera. So for lots of people that shoot direct to social media, it's brilliant because all you've got to do is hold the camera in the aspect that you want. And when you output that video, so you can either transfer it to your app or you can put it onto your computer, that's the aspect that it's actually going to be held in. So really quick, really easy. And again, still at all those different quality settings that we've looked at before, which is awesome. But also from a video perspective, and I'm actually using my OM5 Mark I here, and I pretty much do for all of my live streaming, is that the OM5 Mark II also has plug and play when it comes to using it as a webcam. Works with all of your standard platforms. It's literally turn the mode dial on the top of the camera into movie, plug it in via USB-C, turn the camera on, and select webcam, which is 2 clicks down. So something I've remembered now because I can do it without looking at the camera or looking at the back of the camera. Turn it on, 2 clicks down, press OK, and bang, the camera's ready to go. But also you've got a red recording frame being added to when you are capturing video. And on top of that, you've also got a recording lamp that flashes on the front of the camera. You can actually change the intensity on that as well. So you don't want something that, that's changing the color of what you're videoing because that light's flashing so much. You can actually change the intensity of that as well. But so if you're vlogging or blogging, you've got that indicator to you. If you're not looking at your LCD screen, you can see that that camera's recording because of the light, the lamp flashing on the front of it. Okay. Now, a couple of other convenient features to finish, guys. This is a big one, and this is something that I could have let off with, but I decided not to, is the new menu system. So the OM5 Mark II uses the menu system from the OM1 Mark II, OM1 Mark I, and also the OM3. So you can pretty much guess and guarantee that moving forward, all of our interchangeable lens cameras and hopefully all of our cameras are going to be utilizing this menu system. It's been really well received for those of you who have been part of the Ollie family for a really long time. It's familiar. It's really easy to navigate because, again, all of your icons and everything are familiar with what you would have had with your previous generation cameras. But also for somebody who's either new to our system or new to photography, everything's very logically laid out. Everything's really well set. And as the product trainer and specialist, this has done me huge favors with being able to reference things to people when they reach out to say, hey, I'm looking for XYZ or suggest how to change something. All I've got to do is say, go to AF, page number 3 down. This is what you're looking for, and this is what you're going to change. So again, it's done me a huge favor personally, which is probably why I love it so much. But it is really logical and really nicely laid out. So it's just a brilliant thing, again, to have. And it's also great to have that consistency across our current range moving forward as well, which is pretty cool. And then on top of that, we've also got My Menu. So My Menu is basically the ability to be able to call out key functions and features within the camera and house them within your own personal My Menu. So you've got 5 different tabs and 7 different options that you can plug in here. Generally, what I've seen people do them is sort of break them down via genre. So you might have all of your key things for landscape photography, and then a whole different range for sports and wildlife or macro photography. So you can actually separate them. And again, it's My Menu, as in your menu. You can basically make it whichever way you like. And it's really simple and easy to do. All you've got to do is highlight whatever you're looking for or what you want to put into My Menu. While you're in the menu, press the red button on the top of the camera, and then you tell it which category that you want it to be put into. So really quick and really easy. But also for those people that are, again, new to photography or you haven't had a real camera before, you might sort of be only photographing on touchscreens with phones and that sort of thing. What is cool about the inbuilt scene modes is that these are all controllable by touch as well. So once you go into the scene mode option on the top of the camera on the mode dial, you can go through each of these scenarios and double tap and to select or and go backwards as well. Go through each of these different options. So really quick and really easy for the camera to assist you to set up for that particular moment that you're trying to capture. It's a great learning tool as well, because you can watch and see what the camera is actually doing in order to capture that shot. So it gives you little reference points as you sort of begin your photographic journey. But as you would expect, as your technique and your experience grows with the camera really grows with you and enables you to do some pretty amazing things. So that is nearly it from my side from all the pre-prepared stuff, guys. So I think, or I hope you all agree that there's some pretty awesome things in this brand new camera. Availability is very, very soon, although that will depend which country you're in. But in Australia, I'm pretty sure stock is going to be shipping into our retail partners within the next week or so. But also a question that we have been getting as well is, what's in the box? So when you get the camera, you're also getting the USB-C charging cable, the battery, and the strap built into there as well. So just in case you were wondering what you're going to get with it, that's what you're going to be getting with it. Okay. Now, that's it from my officialdom, guys. I throw the floor open to you, and I know that Ante's been doing a really good job of answering all of these sort of questions for long. I'm just going to have a quick flick back through here just to see if there's anything that we've missed or anything that Ante that you would like me to call out to. But a quick note here to Nicholas. So keep working on that team. Adobe does their best for optimal compatibility. Let me go back to Nicholas's question. Okay. So I'm really sorry. I can't find that comment that Ante's responded to Nicholas on that. But when it comes to, oh, there you go. So Ante's just popped in there, guys. If you didn't see that in the chat, that the Australian stores will start receiving stock from this Friday. So only in a couple of days, which is awesome. But just looking at that that note that Ante has put back to Nicholas in regards to Adobe compatibility, I think that's what you guys are talking about. Unfortunately, the way that Adobe updates Camera Raw, and I say unfortunately, it's their pattern. It's just the way they do it. They generally update once every quarter or once every 3 months. But I did actually note just before, well, when I was setting up for this evening, that there was a Camera Raw update that came through. So I might double check that after we get off this to see if that did add compatibility for the OM5 Mark II. It was with Capture One. Nicholas is saying, yeah, cool. Look, Capture One, amazing. For those of you who haven't used Capture One editing software before, awesome. They actually create a custom RAW profile for every camera that it's compatible with. I guess the only downside to it is that it comes with cost. It can be quite expensive depending on how you purchase it. But straight out of camera, RAWs in Capture One do actually look really, really nice. But again, it comes with the cost, and it also the workflow is a little bit different on that as well. So I think, rightly or wrongly, the majority of people do their editing in Adobe products. They have their workflow. You have your workflow. I have my workflow. It's pretty, you have your processes that you go through while you're actually processing an image. There is lots of great softwares out there. It really just comes down to, cost, availability, whether you're going to use it for work or whether you are just using it for fun, and therefore what that cost comes with it as well. But we also do have a solution for that, which we haven't talked about tonight, which is our own proprietary software called OM Workspace. That Workspace program is a free download. All you've got to do is pop your camera's serial number in when you're downloading. It's, as I said, completely free. There's no add-ons. There's no, hey, you can buy this on top and da-da-da-da. It's really, really brilliant for its output. The 16-bit TIFF files are amazingly good. But there's also an inbuilt AI noise reduction component to it as well, which actually covers quite a few cameras going back to, I think, the EM1 Mark II off the top of my head, and then pretty much everything moving forward from there. So OM5 Mark II is, of course, going to be included in that as well. So if you're new to photography or you're new to the brand, you're not really, so you're finding your way when it comes to image processing and that sort of thing, and you're not really sure what you want to invest in yet, get onto OM Workspace, because again, it's a free download. It doesn't cost you anything, and it sort of lets you start that editing process to achieve those beautiful results that you can when you shoot with raw files. The JPEG engine in our cameras, and again, I'm probably very biased, but our JPEG engine is very good. It does produce really, really nice images, but obviously the advantage of shooting in a raw profile means that you've just got that extra malleability to be able to manipulate that file in the way that you want to. But it's also not always appropriate as well. Sometimes you'll be like, camera's just done a great job with this JPEG image that it's produced. So while we talk about that, just while I think of it, yes, you can shoot in 2 file types at the same time. So it does have a singular card slot because it's so small, but you can shoot in a RAW and a JPEG file at the same time. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the great JPEG that the camera produces for you, but then you've also got that raw file that you can edit yourself or process later on. So cool. Oh, there we go. Note from Nicholas. Nicholas, you've been fantastic on the comments tonight. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. Nicholas just commented that OM Workspace is the best for processing high-res shots. So that is actually a very good point, Nicholas, that you raised, because depending on what software that you use, it can sometimes take them a little bit of time to catch up with the high-resolution shot. It did do for the 14-bit RAW file for some of our other cameras, but once they get there, and obviously it's brilliant what you can do with those as well. So awesome, guys. All right, well, look, that is the end of your first look at the brand new OM5 Mark II, guys. If there aren't any other questions, then I'll sign off for the evening, but it's been my absolute pleasure to join you this evening. I really hope you've enjoyed yourselves as well, and hopefully it's been a little bit of fun and a little bit of educational at the same time. Despite what people think, I don't actually love the sound of my own voice, so that's why I do enjoy doing things on YouTube, because again, the reach is so simple and easy for people. But because I've got no sort of interaction with people, it can be a little bit hard sometimes, because again, I'm just reading comments as they go along, as opposed to on Zoom or in face to face. You can read people's reactions. You can work on what they're doing. So that can be a little bit of a challenge when we are doing it this way. But again, it's also a brilliant way for us to be able to reach lots of people. So if there's no other questions, guys, I haven't seen anything else pop up through there. So if there aren't any other questions, guys, look, I will leave it there for right now. But Ante, if you haven't popped in the link to all of our events page, I might just do that for you right now. So give me one sec. If I can get that to load for me. Oh, okay, no, that's not going to do it for me there, because I can do it here. Give me one sec, guys, because when especially with YouTube sessions, we don't get to see where people have found out about this particular session. But again, it's important that everybody knows all the things that we're doing. And it's not just online events. We do lots of physical events around the world as well. You can filter by language, depending on where you happen to be in the world. You can also filter between online and physical sessions as well. So I'm just going to pop this into the chat here, guys. And that is our events page. So please stay tuned for anything that we've got coming up. There's lots of stuff coming up around the new camera, of course. But let me jump back into there. Yep, cool. Okay, so that's there. Oh, it is already there. Thank you. Thanks, Ante. Sorry. Cool, guys. Well, look, again, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It really is much appreciated. Stay tuned for any of the future sessions that we've got coming up, whether they be online or physical. But otherwise, get out there, get your hands on a brand new OM5 Mark II, and you're going to be able to capture some beautiful images as well. So thank you very much, guys. It really is much appreciated, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks very much, guys.